The gilded gates of Buckingham Palace have witnessed centuries of triumph, scandal, and quiet calculation, but nothing in modern history could have prepared the British public or the global media for the extraordinary sequence of events that unfolded live before millions of viewers. What was intended to be a routine, high-profile royal engagement turned in an instant into a watershed moment for the House of Windsor. In a move that sent shockwaves through the highest corridors of power, King Charles I made a swift, unscripted, and entirely unprecedented decision to strip Queen Camilla's extended family of their recently acquired royal privileges, access, and public accommodations. The atmosphere within the palace walls, according to internal observers, shifted overnight from calculated unity to total crisis management. To understand how the British monarchy arrived at this sudden rupture, one must look at the delicate balance King Charles has tried to maintain since ascending the throne, a balance between preserving traditional institutionality and managing the increasingly visible presence of non-royal family members in the public eye. For months, subtle tensions had been brewing behind the scenes regarding the role and visibility of Queen Camilla's immediate family. Following the coronation, members of the Parker Bowles family, including her children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, as well as her siblings and extended relatives, found themselves thrust into a far more prominent public sphere. While previous monarchs strictly delineated between official working royals and extended non-royal relatives, Queen Camilla's family enjoyed unprecedented access to royal estates, high-profile diplomatic functions, and exclusive palace events. They were frequently seen occupying prime seats at major national services, attending private royal retreats, and utilizing security protocols typically reserved for formal state representatives. For traditionalists within the royal household, this blurring of lines was a constant source of quiet friction. But as long as the public perception remained positive, King Charles was content to allow his wife's family to remain comfortably within the inner fold. However, that fragile harmony shattered completely during a live, internationally broadcast gala aimed at highlighting state initiatives and charitable partnerships. What was meant to be an evening of dignity and strategic public relations deteriorated into an unexpected scene of public disgrace. The event, attended by foreign dignitaries, high-ranking government officials, and senior members of the royal family, was being streamed live to millions across the globe. As the formal proceedings were underway, an unscripted, highly disruptive altercation broke out involving key members of Queen Camilla's extended entourage. What began as a heated, audible argument over protocol and personal influence quickly escalated in full view of the main broadcast cameras. Eyewitnesses near the head table reported sharp exchanges, deeply inappropriate conduct, and an outright refusal by certain individuals to adhere to basic decorum, completely overshadowing the official state program and leaving international guests visibly uncomfortable. The live cameras, unable to cut away quickly enough, captured the entire spectacle. Within seconds, clips of the breach of decorum went viral across social media platforms, sparking immediate outrage and widespread commentary. For a monarchy that relies entirely on public trust, prestige, and seamless professionalism, the incident was nothing short of a public relations catastrophe. Viewers worldwide watched as the carefully curated image of royal dignity was dismantled live on screen. The embarrassment was immediate, but the most significant reaction was happening off-camera, where King Charles sat watching the institutional prestige of the crown being compromised in real time. Known for his deep respect for heritage and his commitment to a streamlined, disciplined monarchy, the king's reaction was reportedly swift, cold, and absolute. Almost immediately following the conclusion of the event, King Charles called an emergency midnight summit at Buckingham Palace, summoning top advisors, legal counsel, and senior household staff. Queen Camilla was present, but accounts from inside the palace suggest the mood was tense and uncompromising. The king made it clear that the institution could not, and would not, tolerate behavior that brought public disgrace upon the crown. He expressed profound disappointment that individuals granted privilege and access through marriage had shown such a blatant disregard for the responsibilities that come with being associated with the sovereign. Recognizing that any delay in response would be interpreted by the public as weakness or favoritism, King Charles took a firm, decisive stand that stunned even his closest aides. In a sweeping executive directive issued directly from the King's private office, Charles officially revoked all elevated privileges previously granted to Queen Camilla's extended family. The decision was immediate and comprehensive. Effective instantly, members of the Parker Bowles family were stripped of special security clearances, unescorted access to royal residences, and preferred status at state functions. Invitations to upcoming royal holiday gatherings, official receptions, and diplomatic events were summarily rescinded. Furthermore, the King ordered a complete review of any public funding, transport allocations, or official perks that had subtly extended to non-working family members over the past year. The directive sent an unambiguous message to the public and the court alike. Access to the royal family is a privilege, not a right, and no personal connection overrides duty to the state. The swiftness of the King's decree left Queen Camilla in a deeply complex and emotionally difficult position. Caught directly between her loyalty to her children and family and her solemn duty as Queen Consort, Camilla faced an unprecedented personal trial. Sources close to the household indicate that while she attempted to mediate the situation and request a private, internal resolution, King Charles remained resolute. He emphasized that the monarchy's survival depends on accountability, and allowing family members to act with impunity would irrevocably damage the crown's standing in the eyes of the nation. The rift within the private quarters was immediate, creating an unprecedented air of tension between the King and Queen as news of the revocation began to circulate through political and royal circles. By morning, the news had broken across major news outlets worldwide. Headlines blared the shocking development, praising the King's decisive leadership on one hand, while dissecting the intense domestic drama unfolding behind palace doors on the other. Constitutional experts and royal commentators noted that Charles had drawn a hard line that previous monarchs rarely dared to draw so publicly. By prioritizing the integrity of the monarchy over personal family comfort, Charles demonstrated a level of ruthless pragmatism that caught critics by surprise. Yet, as the initial shockwaves settled, questions began to mount about the long-term consequences of this public rupture, setting the stage for an intense power struggle within the royal household. As the initial shock of the King's directive reverberated through the British media, the full extent of the immediate fallout began to settle inside the royal household. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere at Buckingham Palace was described by insiders as chillingly quiet, marked by an uneasy distance between the sovereign and his queen consort. Queen Camilla, while understanding the necessity of damage control, was reportedly deeply pained by the public nature of her family's stripping of status. For years, she had worked tirelessly to rehabilitate her own public image, gradually earning the respect of a once skeptical public through consistent service, patience, and devotion to Charles. Now, in a matter of hours, the indiscretions of her extended relatives threatened to unravel a decade of carefully built goodwill, casting a harsh light on her family's presence within the royal orbit. The revoked privileges were not merely symbolic, they represented a fundamental structural removal of access. For the Parker Bowles family, the consequences were immediate and visible. Security detail passes that once allowed unhindered vehicle access through palace gates were quietly deactivated overnight. Key fob entries to private suites at Windsor Castle and Sandringham were revoked, and communications were sent to high-ranking protocol officers instructing them that extended non-royal family members were no longer to be listed on official VIP arrival manifests for future state events. Furthermore, private living quarters that had been informally set aside for extended family visits during holiday seasons were ordered to be cleared and returned to standard Crown estate management. The swift administrative execution left no doubt that the order came directly from the absolute top of the authority structure. Within political circles, the King's firm stance received quiet commendation from government officials who had long voiced subtle concerns about the growing size of the royal entourage. Prime Minister and senior cabinet members, while officially maintaining a stance of strict non-interference in royal family matters, privately acknowledged that Charles had executed a masterclass in institutional preservation. In an era where the public scrutinizes every pound of taxpayer funding and every exertion of unearned privilege, allowing a public spectacle to pass without severe consequences would have invited intense parliamentary scrutiny. By acting decisively before the tabloid press could turn the incident into an ongoing political debate, King Charles effectively neutralized what could have become a toxic scandal for the broader stability of the crown. However, the human cost within the family dynamic was severe. Friends close to Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes revealed that the siblings felt publicly humiliated, believing they were being treated as scapegoats for a situation that had been blown out of proportion by media commentary. Tense phone calls echoed between London and private countryside residences as family members attempted to navigate the sudden ostracism. For Camilla, the situation created an excruciating personal dilemma. Supporting her children publicly meant defying her husband and king, yet remaining silent risks creating a permanent breach with her own blood relatives. Observers noted that during subsequent public engagements in the days immediately following the summit, the physical distance between Charles and Camilla was subtle yet distinctly noticeable to trained royal watchers. Meanwhile, media coverage reached a fever pitch as investigative journalists began digging deeper into the background events that led to the live broadcast disaster. Broadcast networks aired round-the-clock panels analyzing the camera angles, reading lips, and bringing in body language experts to dissect every second of the confrontation. The viral nature of the footage meant that millions of younger viewers, who typically paid little attention to day-to-day royal engagements, were now actively engaging with the narrative online. Speculation ran wild regarding potential underlying rivalries within the broader extended family, with commentary comparing the strict discipline enforced upon Prince William and Princess Catherine's circle with the seemingly looser boundaries that had been granted to the Queen's relatives since the accession. Inside the palace walls, Prince William's role during the crisis became a subject of significant interest. As Prince of Wales and heir to the throne, William has consistently advocated for a strictly modernized, streamlined monarchy focused entirely on high-impact public service. Sources indicated that William supported his father's swift action completely, viewing the firm response as an essential precedent for the future of the institution. William's long-standing belief that non-working relatives should maintain a clear and distinct line from official state duties aligned perfectly with the king's sudden decree. This shared stance reinforced a powerful core of decision-making between the king and his heir, signaling to the rest of the household that the future direction of the monarchy would prioritize institutional integrity above all personal relationships. As the week progressed, the broader implications of the decree began to extend beyond just the Parker Bowles family. A comprehensive audit of all non-official guests, advisors, and honorary title holders associated with the royal household was quietly initiated under the direction of the keeper of the privy purse. The message was clear: the era of informal access and blurred boundaries was officially over. Royal staff were issued updated compliance guidelines detailing strict protocols regarding who could be admitted to private royal properties and under what specific conditions. What had started as a single night of live public disgrace had effectively triggered a massive, sweeping reform of palace operational policy, fundamentally reshaping how the modern court would function moving forward. Despite the firm measures, the public narrative remained volatile. While many commentary outlets praised the king's resolve as a sign of strong leadership, critics began to question whether the public rupture revealed deeper, unaddressed fractures within the modern royal structure. The media hung on every minor detail, waiting to see how Queen Camilla would navigate her upcoming solo public appearances and whether any visible reconciliation would occur behind the scenes. With international attention firmly fixed on Buckingham Palace, the stage was set for the next critical phase, addressing the public directly and attempting to restore long-term stability to a monarchy shaken by an unprecedented internal storm. By the following week, the atmosphere surrounding the royal family had evolved from initial shock into a deep, calculating effort to manage the long-term fallout. Public sentiment across the United Kingdom remained intensely divided, yet leaned heavily in favor of the king's swift intervention. Traditionalists, media commentators, and citizens alike viewed the revoking of privileges as a necessary reaffirmation of the boundaries between sovereign duty and personal kinship. To many, King Charles had demonstrated that the authority of the crown was not a leverage point for personal prestige or elevated social standing. Yet behind the scenes, the internal dynamics of the royal court had fundamentally shifted into a state of heightened caution and defensive posturing. Queen Camilla, navigating the double burden of public scrutiny and family strain, maintained a stoic external posture during her scheduled public engagements. However, courtiers noted a distinct shift in her office's day-to-day operations. Her senior advisors, previously accustomed to broad latitude in coordinating schedule overlaps with extended family events, now operated under strict oversight from the king's private secretary. Every invitation list, every security request, and every logistical itinerary was subjected to rigorous verification to ensure complete adherence to the new royal protocol. The message was unmistakable. There would be no gradual, quiet restoration of status behind the scenes. The lines drawn on the night of the executive directive were permanent. In the higher echelons of the palace hierarchy, the incident accelerated plans for the long-discussed slimming down of the modern monarchy. Senior advisors seized upon the public momentum to formalize a permanent structural framework that clearly defined the boundaries between working royals and extended family members. Under this newly drafted policy, non-working relatives, regardless of their direct relation to the sovereign or the queen consort, were explicitly classified as private citizens with no right to official protection, royal property access, or public representation. The event that had begun as a catastrophic live embarrassment was thus repurposed into the foundational catalyst for a major modernizing reform of the British royal household. For Prince William and Princess Catherine, the resolution of the crisis reinforced their strategic vision for the future of the institution. The Prince of Wales had long argued that the strength of the monarchy lay in its discipline, focus, and transparency. In private discussions with senior household staff, William made it clear that when he eventually ascends the throne, the strict separation between public duty and private privilege would be upheld with absolute rigidity. The seamless alignment between the king and his heir during this critical juncture sent a powerful signal to the wider family network that the future of the monarchy would offer no safe harbor for personal indiscretions or protocol violations. Back within the private residences of the Parker Bowles family, the reality of their new status settled in with a sharp, undeniable quietness. Relieved of their unescorted access passes and public affiliations, the extended family retreated entirely from the public eye, turning down interview requests and issuing terse, no-comment statements through private legal representatives. The initial anger and frustration gradually gave way to a quiet acceptance that the decision was final. While private family gatherings in non-royal, private settings would eventually resume away from the cameras, their brief chapter of enjoying semi-official royal accommodations and public perks had officially come to a definitive end. As the news cycle eventually began to move toward other global events, the lasting impact of the crisis remained etched into the history of King Charles III's reign. The sovereign had proved that when forced to choose between personal harmony and the integrity of the crown, he possessed the resolve to choose the institution without hesitation. The live spectacle that had shocked millions ultimately served to define the core ethos of his era on the throne. A monarchy governed by strict accountability, unwavering respect